So you've already learned about parallelism. You learned about how to use parallel words. That was back in essay 2. And so in your Lost Tools of Writing book, you've got those pages for reminders, but you all know how to do it because you've done it in essay 2 and essay 3. But we learned that sentences can include parallelism by just including 3 words that follow a similar pattern or that follow um, there we go. I'm on the wrong page. That follow a certain rhythm, right? Like you might put 3 adjectives together to describe something or 3 verbs. And some of the examples in your book, one is from The Hobbit, not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell. Great example there from Tolkien. So we've done this. You know how to do this. And when we talked about that, I told you that we were going to do another kind of parallelism, and that might be a little bit harder. And I had mentioned parallel phrases and clauses, and that's where we're going to go. That's what we're going to talk about today in this video. So we're still going to try to use parallelism in our essays, in our writing, because it just it just speaks to the listener. The listener hears this beautiful balance of words. Remember, well, I'm not sure if I used the teeter-totter example, but like when you are on a teeter-totter and there's this balance right up and down. And sometimes when we use parallelism in our writing, it lends that kind of harmony or balance. And that feels good to a reader. Like you and your ear enjoys that parallelism. And hopefully I'll sell you on that when I show you some examples because there's parallelism all over the place. Good writers use it all the time. A great place to find parallelism is in the Bible. It's all over the place. Probably even in Psalm 46. See if in Psalm 46, this passage that we're memorizing, if you can find any parallelism. Okay, what I want to talk about today are phrases and clauses. We used parallelism with just single words before, but now I'm going to push a little bit harder and we're going to use parallel phrases or parallel clauses. But I think it would be good to talk about what is the difference between a phrase and a clause. I don't want you to get too hung up on this and too worried about it, but let's just kind of walk through what is a phrase and what is a clause. Maybe review for you, but that's okay. It's always good to review. So I tried to put phrases and clauses lined up here side by side. Let's talk about a phrase. So a phrase is a group of words and a clause is a group of words, right? They're both groups of words. But the difference is that a phrase lacks a subject and a verb that are working together, like a subject verb combo, like a 2-1 punch, boom, boom. The subject, if there is a subject in a phrase, it's not performing the action of a verb. So it's not doing the work. Let me show you some examples. I think examples is what brings this kind of thinking to life. Let me pause here just for one moment if I can do that. I don't know if I can. Okay, back to recording here. Sorry about that. I had to stop and talk to Mr. B. All right. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so examples I think help this to come alive and it not be so clinical and I don't know, boring, I guess. Sorry. Okay, so let's look at a couple examples of a phrase. On the wall. All right, so if I said on the wall, that's clearly a phrase. There's no verb there. There's a noun, wall, but it's not doing an action of a verb. So there's not a subject verb combo. They're not working together here. In Harriet Hall. Well, there's no verb. Well, like right there's what's happening in Harriet Hall. So that's just a phrase. Leaving a trail of blood. Okay, well, there's no subject there, right? So we don't really have this subject verb working together to create meaning. Look at the last one here I've got on here, running to the lake. Who is doing the running? There's a noun, we have lake, but it's not the subject, right? So we don't have a subject verb working together to create meaning. So these are just phrases, and phrases are great. They help add detail and help clarify sentences, and we use phrases all the time. What about clauses? So clauses are a group of words that have a subject and a verb working together. Now, the tricky thing here is you can have a dependent clause or an independent clause. A dependent clause is it's not a complete thought. It can't stand alone, right? It's incomplete. We need some more information. Whereas an independent clause expresses a complete thought and it can stand all by itself. It's a complete sentence. Okay, so let's look at this. Bleeding as he fled. So we have he, subject, fled, the verb, but it's not a complete sentence, right? So it is a clause, but it's a dependent clause. I need more information. So kind of the big difference here is that in a phrase, you don't have a subject and a verb working together. Bleeding as he fled, the monster escaped the hall. That would make it an independent clause. That stands alone. It's a complete thought, complete sentence. Okay, so phrases and clauses, just a quick review there about what those things are and how they work when we write sentences. But our main goal here is to talk about parallelism. And so when we did parallelism the first time, we used single words to kind of just amplify an idea, to give more details. And they create patterns, they build harmony in our writing, and good writers use parallelism all the time. And good reading helps you to see that. So if you're reading great works, you're going to see parallelism. Charles Dickens, who else? Shakespeare, goodness, even modern writers. A book by Leaf Anger. Oh, I just hit it in my hands. Peace Like a River. Parallelism, all over the place. Good writers use these, and I'm going to show you examples. But what they do is they're building similar structures in a pair or a series of phrases or clauses. And so whereas when we use single words, we built similar words, right? So maybe 3 adjectives to describe something. And that lent some parallelism. But now we're going to take that and we're going to make it bigger. We're going to jump off of that practice that we have, and we're going to build parallel phrases or parallel clauses. And our goal is to create a pattern to build harmony. The best way to figure this out, I think, is just to look at examples. So let's look. Of course, the Bible is a great place to see parallelism. Romans 13:11 says, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. So do you see a similar pattern going on in this verse? What do you see? I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. So the sentences, well, they're complete clauses there, working together in one sentence. But the words are the same except for talked, thought, and reasoned, right? And so there's harmony there. There's balance. Let's look at more examples. What do you see here? This is the opening of someone's paper. A diamond necklace, a devastated couple, an expensive loan. These 3 things intersect in the story of The Necklace by Guy de Maupassant. I don't even really know how to say his last name, honestly. But look what they did for their opener, their exordium. They took 3 phrases, and this works. I think this is poetic. This is okay. A diamond necklace. It's not a complete sentence, but they're using it as well. A devastated couple, an expensive loan. That's getting my attention. And there's harmony there. There's balance there, right? Let's look at another one. Say this could be a thesis statement. David should have fought Goliath for 3 reasons. He was an experienced protector, a skilled fighter, and a devoted believer. So we have, what do we got there? We've got a protector, a fighter, and a believer. So we've got some nouns that are matching up, but then they just attached a descriptor, right? An adjective, experienced protector, skilled fighter, devoted believer. Do you see how those things just have some balance and harmony and they're working together? And it sounds good to the ears, right? Let's try another one. What do you see here? Here's an example from Beowulf. Oh, this is actually from your book that you're reading. Where's my copy? Beowulf. I should have put the line numbers there to kind of give you, in fact, I think I can change it while I'm doing it. I should have put the line numbers there because I'm encouraging you to use the line numbers when you find quotes. But this is line 2,285. So it's on page 95 if you want to see it with your eyes. The cup brought peace to a slave, pleased his master, but stirred a dragon's anger. Do you see that parallelism there? Things that the cup did, right? Brought peace, pleased his master, stirred a dragon's anger. Lovely parallelism from our translator who translated Beowulf. Here's another example from scripture, Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. So I highlighted for you, we've got 3 verb phrases there going on. Walks not in the counsel of the wicked, stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. And there's just, it balances. There's harmony, and it's beautiful. Parallelism is just captivating when a writer uses it well. British Lit is reading Tale of Two Cities right now, and the whole opening paragraph is 1 sentence long, and it's all these kind of contrasting ideas. But the first contrasting set that he uses is it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So these are opposite ideas, and that's a specific kind of parallelism called antithesis. We're going to talk about that later. I love antithesis. Anyway, this is an example of parallelism. Best of times, worst of times. Okay, so let's say you are going to write an essay about Beowulf, and you've got to use an example of parallelism. What could you do? Here's an example, something you could write. Whether Beowulf was defending Harrod Hall, plunging into a bloody lake, or facing a dreadful dragon, his courage proved his worth. I could have just said, when Beowulf defended Harrod Hall, he proved his worth. Or when Beowulf courageously defended Harrod Hall, he proved his worth. And that would be okay. It's a fine sentence. But if I want to try to build parallelism, some kind of balance or harmony in my writing, I could consider verb phrases. And I've got 3 here. Defending Harrod Hall, plunging into a bloody lake, facing a dreadful dragon. Now, it's the verbs that are harmonic right here, right? Defending, plunging, facing. It doesn't have to be a 1-to-1 matchup for every single word. Sometimes parallel structure does that. It matches just perfectly. But there's still harmony here. How do you do this? Where do you start? Well, you're still in the invention stage and we're creating lists. And I just wanted you to watch this because I think you have time this week. You haven't even written your essay yet. And when you do, and you bring it to class, we're going to try to identify clauses or phrases that you already have in your essay that you can then amplify and build these kind of parallel structures. And like all good tools for writing, you really just, in this essay are going to look for 1, maybe 2 places you could use it. If you wrote in this parallel structure all the time, it would just get too sing-songy or predictable. Right? This is just something you're going to use as a tool. You're going to pull it out of your toolbox and you're going to say, I'm going to use this sentence and work on practicing making this parallel. So where do you start? A great place is to look at your proofs. Teachers are looking at your papers and they want your proofs to be parallel because it just works and it makes sense. And when something doesn't fit the parallel structure, like say maybe 2 things are parallel, and then there's the third one that's just totally off and different, it's jarring to the reader. And so having parallel phrases in your proofs is a great place to start. So that's where I would suggest that you start. So say you had to write a paper about Little Red Riding Hood. Let's look at this proof, these proofs. Little Red Riding Hood should stay on the path for 3 reasons: her mother's instructions, her grandmother's health, and Little Red's safety. So we have 3 phrases here: her mother's instructions, her grandmother's health, Little Red's safety, right? Those are phrases. We don't have a noun and a verb working together, a subject and a verb working together. So these are phrases. And what they are is and this happens a lot when you create a thesis statement. You might say Odysseus's carelessness, or you might draft a thesis statement that is talking about a character and different characteristics of the character. And that's what's happening here. Mother's instruction, grandmother's health, little red's safety. And so we've got these possessive nouns who are acting like adjectives because we have instructions, health, and safety. And those are all nouns, right? And so when I build this pattern and these things are put together, there's harmony. They're all doing the same kind of work in the thesis statement. That's one place to start, is to look at your proofs and to really strive to make your proofs parallel. Another place to start is to, if you've got your rough draft, to look for a phrase or a clause that is already in your essay. Let me just give you an example. So you read book 9 of the Odyssey, and I might have said in a subproof, Odysseus's men cried at the oars, right? I mean, they're in the boat and they just want to get away so desperately, and Odysseus is taking his time to have a little word battle with the Cyclops. So Odysseus's men cried at the oars. So I'm just going to give you 2 examples of how you can take, that little phrase and turn it into an example of parallelism. So I thought about, okay, they cried at the oars. What else did they do? And I thought they trembled in fear. What else did they do? They begged Odysseus not to taunt the Cyclops. So they put those 3 things together, and it is parallelism. Odysseus' men trembled in fear, cried at the oars, and begged Odysseus not to taunt the Cyclops. Now, do I have to have 3 things? Not necessarily. It's not a magic number. You can have parallelism with pairs, and you see that all the time in good writing, where you've got these 2 things that are balancing and working together. So I could do just 2 things in my sentence. I could say, Odysseus' men trembled in fear and cried at the oars. Do you see how those 2 ideas are working together and they're creating some kind of balance or harmony? It just sounds satisfying, I guess, when something has some harmony to it. Okay, so to leave you off with this video, what I did is I looked up a bunch of quotes from writers. And I want to show you a lot of these quotes actually use parallelism in the statement that they make. So here's one by Samuel Johnson, and he said, "What is written without effort is in general read without pleasure." I don't know how that happens. There we go. All right, so written without effort, read without pleasure. Do you see how both of those phrases just have some balance there? John Acuff said, 90% perfect and shared with the world always changes more lives than 100% perfect and stuck in your head. So we got some parallel ideas here, right? We have 90% perfect on one side, and the other side of this sentence, we have 100% perfect. So those things have balance. Let's see. Shared with the world is a contrast with stuck in your head. See how those things harmonize with each other? They're opposites, but the contrast gives you parallelism. All right. So very nice balanced statement. Now, these would be great for your commonplace quote book, by the way. Michael Hyatt said, "You can't fail if you don't quit. You can't succeed if you don't start." Do you hear the balance there? Can't fail, can't succeed if you don't quit, if you don't start. Lovely. And then Jane Yolen, and I don't know who Jane Yolen is. I guess I'll go look her up. She said this, and there's some parallelism buried in her phrasing. Exercise the writing muscle every day. So you should be writing every day, right? Even if it's only a letter, notes, a title list, a character sketch, a journal entry. So she's doing something there. She's creating a list, right? And it's very similar to that first kind of parallelism that we talked about. And then she says, writers are like dancers, like athletes. And she's on purpose leaving some words out. And that's another tool. We can talk about that as you get a little bit older. I think when you get to that 3-year rotation, like Brit Lit, Ancient Lit, American Lit, we talk about polysyndeton, asyndeton. So she's doing some other things. But look here, writers are like dancers, like athletes. So like dancers, like athletes, that's parallel. Without that exercise, the muscles seize up. So there's some good encouragement for you as a writer. And I will leave you with this. We're just practicing. And so don't feel like you have to get it perfect or that you fully understand the difference between a phrase and a clause. I think we'll grow into that. And I think that if you just try, if you just put it on paper, like when you have your rough draft and I say, let's just practice this, that is a great place to start. You can always edit words on a paper. If you put nothing on paper, you can't edit it, right? But if you just put it out there, it gives you a place to start and something to work with. And the more you do this, the more you use this tool, the better you will get. I promise you. It just like I'll use my Britlet kids for example. So my Britlet kids this year, it's their 3rd year writing with me. And all of a sudden, their writing is just singing. It's harmonious, it's beautiful. And they're comfortable writing with parallelism because they've practiced it for a couple of years. They're good at it. And it takes a little bit of time. So we're just practicing. That's what we're doing. And when it comes time, when you bring your rough draft to class of your Beowulf essay, we'll take a look at it and we'll try to find places where you can include a parallel phrase or parallel clause to help your writing be harmonious. All right. God bless you, and I will see you in class on Thursday.